You ready, Chris?
Yep.
Need a moment?
Me?
No, Chris.
Oh, no, I'm good.
No. He's a professional.
Does anyone need a moment?
Does anyone need a moment? Well, hello, and welcome once again to the DCL podcast, where we're inviting you to sit back, relax, and we'll be on our way shortly. Well, welcome back to the DCL podcast, your podcast to help you and your family cruise a little smarter when the ships start sailing. And I'd like to welcome back to the show our co-host from all the way down in Southern California. How are you doing today, Chris?
I am doing good, Steve. How are you doing?
Not too bad. How's fatherhood or parenthood?
It is new. I'm learning something new, and I'm not sleeping very well. But that is, I hear, at least the first part of the gig. So I'm going with it.
Yeah, it's the kid cave, man. It's all dark to begin with. You know, like your light was bright, and all of a sudden it gets dark, and then slowly the light starts to come out again, and you get to do different things. So, anyways, hey, so we've got our super cool guest on, a longtime supporter of the show. But I'm kind of wondering, my mind always goes into weird places and stuff like that. But, you know, Walt Disney World, Mickey Mouse, Minnie Mouse, who do you think, what of all the states in America, where do you think that they'd want people to come from?
Like, what state in the country who? Mickey Mouse and Walt Disney?
I know where you're going with this.
Who do they want to come down to their house and hang out with them? The Wisconsinites.
I'm not even
the cheeseheads.
Oh my goodness.
That's so bad.
I'd like to Steve.
I'd like to welcome to the show, good friend of the show, Chad. How you doing today, Chad?
Really good. I should have grabbed the cheesehead we actually have in our basement. I can go grab it if you really want me to be in the mood. I could totally do that.
See, I've tried to come up with something different every time when we start the show, and so I'm running with that one tonight.
Although I remember it was probably 10, 15 years ago, California was running their big promotion about how all the happy cows come from California, but we say otherwise here in Wisconsin.
And Chris has still got like this. Oh, we lost him. Oh. That's okay. We'll just keep running with it. All right. So let's jump into it. We'll have a little audio difficulties with Chris. We'll get him back, but let's jump into it. Chad, you guys just got back from a wonderful trip down at Walt Disney World, didn't you?
We did. It was great. It was after a year of plans going awry for one reason or another, two canceled cruises because of COVID. It was refreshing to get back down and be on vacation. And as weird as it is, I've been telling people, I keep saying how great it was to spend time together, which seems weird considering we've all been with each other for nothing but 6 months straight or whatever it is. But it's different when you're kind of out away from home and sort of doing things together versus kind of being in the same house but in different rooms sometimes. So it was a fabulous week down there. Any
thoughts on that, Chris?
There's something to be said about staying in the same house with someone, seeing them all day, every day for an entire pandemic. But because you're in that same environment, you don't really get to like connect in creative and exciting ways. In a lot of ways, the parks are sort of like playgrounds for families and like exploration spaces. It makes a lot of sense that like there would be a whole different kind of bonding that happens, especially after quarantine.
Just getting out of our regular routines was everything, frankly. You're away from work and shutting everything else off and just being with each other, kind of doing new things and experiencing new things. It's because it's been 8 years since we've been to the parks. We really have been focused on cruising for the last several years. And in some ways, we were actually looking for an excuse to get back to the park. Nobody would wish this to happen, but this kind of became a good excuse to do so.
I think that's done that for a lot of people. I know like that's part of the reason why you guys went up to Yosemite, right, Chris? That's part of the reason why our family pivoted and went to Yellowstone, which was not in our plans at all. And we just had a great time.
Yep. It's all about improvising when 2020 decides to ruin everything. At least we can like come up with some fun alternatives.
So before we jump into your experiences down to the park, let's just go back real quick. Chad, why don't you give everybody kind of your cruising background? I know you guys have been on a lot of different cruises, and is there a cruise that stood out for you and your family?
Yeah, so we didn't start really cruising, or I didn't start cruising until really 2014. So my wife and I went on a 10-year anniversary cruise on Norwegian. I know, Steve, you started with Norwegian as well. we toyed with the idea actually on our honeymoon of doing it, but I figured that would be a real bad time to learn that I get seasick. So we sort of pushed that off to another time. Once we cruised with Norwegian on breakaway out of New York, went to Bermuda. And I mean, literally from the jump, I loved it. Just the whole experience of, frankly, cutting off from the rest of the world was great for me. And just kind of being in this sort of environment where you could either do nothing or you could do everything, just what super appealed to me. So we could either chill or we could do whatever. And it was fine. It was whatever you felt like doing in the moment was great. When we came back from that and we'd been building up our cachet of, or not cachet, but our Mickey Bucks with our Disney reward card. We talked about trying to go back to the parks at some point. We're like, when we came back from that, I was like, well, hey, why don't we start looking at Disney Cruise Line? And then took our family on our first Disney cruise on the Fantasy in January of 2016 on an Eastern Caribbean. And, again, just it was super impressed with DCL. And it really had meant that to almost be sort of a one and done cruise going into it, just knowing the price difference and how much we'd really enjoyed Norwegian in the past. But the reality was, when I looked at the way that my kids enjoyed their time on the cruise and sort of getting a little bit of freedom to walk around, and you just felt really comfortable, given it was a lot of families and stuff on there. And, my son basically sitting in the pool all day watching Funnel Vision, literally getting like goggle marks from like watching the Funnel Vision through his goggles and stuff like that. We weren't going to get that on other cruise lines. So that then took us back to do another cruise on Dream in 2017. We did actually 2 cruises in 2017. We did one of the Dream in January, did the Fantasy again for a Maritime cruise in November of 2017. And then we've done Marvel Day at Sea cruise on the Magic. And then my wife and I did a anniversary trip for our 15-year on Dream, just a short 3-day, because it was frankly always about all the vacation time that we had to burn at that point, but just wanted a little bit of a getaway. I think of all those, though, my favorite one is probably the Marvel Day at Sea. We were, I would say, very casual Marvel fans, but once we sort of booked the cruise and sort of started watching all the films, we got all, like, my wife, who I never in a million years would have thought would have been into superhero movies, was all about this, like, to the point where like she and I were like dressing up as like Star-Lord and Gamora during one of the days on the cruise. But it was super fun. I wish it would have been maybe a couple days longer than the 5 days, but loved really. And that was, again, our first time on the Magic, which we loved. So it was really great.
Yeah, I was going to say, based on your track record, it seems like maybe you're fans of the Dream class ships, but of the Marvel Day at Sea.
If you're going to ask me like what my favorite ship is, I probably would go with the Fantasy, just because it's my first, you right. Never forget your first kind of thing. But that said, there are things about the Magic that I like better. I think the adult areas are better personally. I like just how compact it is in a lot of ways. I think the dining experiences are a little bit better, just because of the Rapunzel's Royal Table and stuff like that. Just some of the stuff that was going on. The thing that I really loved about that Marvel cruise wasn't even always necessarily just the Marvel stuff. It felt like it was just sort of a different thing kind of going on every day, right? Because you still had your pirate night, so that was like that was sort of your pirate day. And then you had your Marvel Day at Sea day, which was that day, and then you had another day which was sort of your Tangled day, where they had like the Tangled show and they had the Snuggly Duckling takeover and stuff like that. So it was almost like you had like these 3 different themes going on during that cruise. It was almost like a different experience every day, which I thought was really neat.
So when did you do that cruise again?
That was January of 2019.
I know that cruise does either Cozumel or Grand Cayman. Which one did you choose?
We did the Grand Cayman one. So, which was actually, it was a repeat port for us from our previous cruise. So because of that, we actually never even got off the ship in Grand Cayman. I know people will probably be furious about that, but we were honestly, because we weren't going to have that many days on the ship and stuff like that. The only port we got off at was at Castaway.
No, yeah, I mean, each cruise is what you make of it, right? And you have different things going into it, and different things fit differently. But I think you won't have very many arguments with people on how cool that is about the Magic with the different days like that. I think that's kind of a neat experience to have. And I've really thought about it that way, to be completely honest, how you can break down those different themes every day. And I love the fact when they do that Tangled Day. Did you guys have when they had Flynn Rider running through the ship like during dinner and the guards were chasing him? by any
Yes,
chance?
yeah, that's during the dinner show or whatever they do. It's because it's supposed to be Rapunzel's birthday that day,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
so she's coming around, and yeah, they do the whole sing along thing where like literally they get you up like dancing around the dining room and stuff like that. It's a fun experience.
I really look forward to getting back and experiencing that, but I'm really curious to see what they're going to do with the Wish as far as, bringing some type of experiences like that for people.
You have to think they're going to do something like that just because it seems like it's proving super popular. So we've now had, I mentioned sort of 2 canceled cruises. Both of those were on the Wonder, which was to try and get our Grand Slam here. I've heard nothing but amazing things about Tiana's Place and stuff like that. So it's something that we really want to experience at some point. But the popularity of these sort of dinner type shows, you have to think that that's something they're looking at. What would be great is if they actually did like a purpose built venue for that, because the bad part about Rapunzel's Royal Table, and I suspect it's probably for Tiana's also, is there's some sightline issues because of posts and stuff that are in there. So depending on where you're sitting, you can't always see everything. But the reality is that sort of dinner show was sort of retrofitted into that space. If they could do something where they could purposely build something that was for a dinner show, maybe tiered seating or something like that, that could be, then you're talking something really special.
I agree. I think it's really complicated because the dining on the older ships, by them adding Tiana's Place and them adding Rapunzel's, I think part of that is to be like, look, these old ships are sparkly and new and they have great experiences that the newer ships don't have. But I sort of feel like that is true, and I wish they were purpose-built into the ship because the experience would probably be that much better. Like, it's a great experience, but I think we've had guests on our show who are like, I didn't actually get to see Tiana because we were in the back corner and it was really far away. Or I didn't quite hear what was going on because, the acoustics in the restaurant were not designed for a show like that.
That's legit criticism. We had trouble hearing sometimes and stuff in there, and then we were kind of over, not I would say like in the back corner, but we were to the back, and there was again a post kind of in the way, so we couldn't quite see all of this sort of stage area and stuff like that. So I think you're right, but I also think you're right about the fact that they're adding those to the older ships to try and sort of find ways of getting people on board because of new experiences. I wonder if that means that they may move some of those things to maybe one of the Dream class ships. Yeah. Exactly. Enchanted Garden is not my favorite place. I know other people love that restaurant, but it's just of the 3, that's the one I could lose in a heartbeat.
It's probably like the least. I don't want to say it's like the least themed, but you're right. It's probably the one that is probably the least memorable for a lot of people. I kind of like it for some reason, but
I think it's because it's the least Disney, right? Like the Royal Table Triton vibe. That's always like princess castle type of vibe. But the Enchanted Garden theme is essentially just like Imagineers through a little bit of cool effects. For those of you who don't know, like the lighting in the restaurant shifts from like daytime to nighttime, and there are these flower-shaped lights that bloom throughout dinner. But it sounds cooler when you say it out loud than when you actually see it, because
experience it.
Yeah, it's not like really, really effects heavy. And
it's subtle, because I think I've had to have at some point like waiters like pointing out, oh look, hey, the lights have changed, and even you're not looking at them. It's
Their star is out now.
Now they can't. What they can't do is get rid of the French ones, because like Steve, I do not want them to get rid of the escargot
or the fried brie or my favorite dessert. Like that restaurant does have lots of things that are like staple Disney cruise lines
for sure.
No, there's too many tie-ins to that one. Beauty and the Beast, I'm like the Cinderella and all the rest of it. I'd hate to see that. I doubt that they would lose that one. Well, let's kind of pivot, Chad, just like you guys did. You guys had a couple cruises cancel, unfortunately, on the Wonder. Hopefully you'll be able to get back on that soon and get that Grand Slam completed. And then just as soon as you get that done, they're going to add the Wish, and it's going to be like a whole nother thing, right?
Yeah, I mean, we're recording here on the day that the new itineraries are released, and already the wheels are starting to spin. So it's just as soon as I think that I'm done with one thing and moving on to something, now all of a sudden you start thinking again, and here it is. But maybe try and reclaim our trip, because we were trying to pair that with Disneyland, which we'd not been to before, as a sort of West Coast thing. But maybe for 22, we'll see.
Yeah, come on out, cruise on the Wonder out of San Diego. It's awesome. Yeah. So, all right, so you guys pivot. You guys go to Walt Disney World and said you haven't been there for 8 years, I believe you said.
Yep.
I mean, it's kind of like, where do you stay? Where do you even start from that? I guess before we get to that, though, what was your feelings as far as, watching the crowd levels down there, dealing with the whole COVID situation, on whether you really wanted to go there or not? Did the crowds being less kind of entice you to say, hey, I think we can go down and do it? What were you guys' thoughts?
It did. So, honestly, so after our second cruise was canceled, so we had a March spring break cruise booked, and then we pivoted and said, okay, let's push it to October, because by October this thing's done, right? So we should be well and good. Well, maybe there's a fall surge, but we'll catch it before the fall surge starts. Well, then of course they canceled that cruise too. So at some point we decided just to stop sort of kicking the can down the road on cruises and look and see what things we might be able to do, with our vacation funds. So, Disneyland still not being open, we started looking at Walt Disney World, knowing that, because I think it was July or something is when they started to reopen. And you started seeing the reports, shortly after they came back of they've got hand sanitizers all over the place, and there's hand washing stations, and they're really encouraging social distancing, and the crowd levels are super low. And, we started talking to my wife and I, and just started saying, okay, well, maybe this is something we should look at. And then you start hearing the reports of people coming back and saying, hey, I felt more nervous about going to the grocery store than I did going to Walt Disney World. I think that was the point where we really started saying, all right, well, let's start booking stuff. But the reality, I mean, and everything was so different, right? Because it was, in a way, Walt Disney World had become so intimidating since the last time that we were there. With, oh my God, you've got to get in at the 6-month mark and then book this, and then you've got to book this, and then if you don't have all your fast passes lined up by this date, then you're not going to be able to get. All of that was gone, right? So it was one of those things of, all right, well, listen, we know we're not going to necessarily have maybe the traditional Walt Disney World vacation out of this, but people are going down there, they're finding value in this. There's we're going to be able to basically jump on rides that with wait times that we never would have been able to in a non-COVID time. And let's start looking at this. So we started looking at hotels. We previously had really mostly stayed. My wife and I, when we were there for our anniversary trip, did like a night at Caribbean Beach. But usually we've stayed over at like the All Stars, because they had those family suites where we could have sort of they're pretty affordable, and then you could basically have a separate bedroom, and then we could put the kids to bed, and then my wife and I could sort of game plan in the evening. So when we traveled to the parks, that was kind of what we did. Well, all those are shut down. Then we started looking at, okay, so Pop Century's open, let's go do that. But one of our sort of bucket list things that we wanted to get out of this was, we're like, all right, well, if we're going to have this big disappointment of having all our cruises canceled, something that we've always wanted to do was get a Savannah View room at Animal Kingdom Lodge. So let's at least get something really cool out of this and say, it's something that we may not have done otherwise. But since we've got all this cruise money that's tied up with Mickey, because we frankly had paid a lot of it with gift cards, it had to be spent at Disney. So we've got the money. Let's go ahead and sort of go all out with this thing. So that was really the thought process around it. But I mean, honestly, listening to the reviews of people and, watching YouTube videos and stuff like that, and sort of seeing the comfort level people had, made a huge difference just to get us comfortable with the idea of going there.
Was that your first time traveling in a plane since the pandemic started?
It was, yeah. So that was, and we were on Southwest, but them keeping middle seats open and just having sort of, getting some comfort. I think one of the things that we've learned also is that we've learned how to live with this thing since March too, right? Whereas I think if you'd asked me back in March what I was afraid of between the Disneyland and the cruise piece of that trip, I would have told you Disneyland in a heartbeat, because at that point people worried about like bringing groceries into their home, and oh my, I mean, do I need to leave these things sitting in the garage for 2 days so all the COVID is killed off of them? We've learned now more about this thing, and it sounds like it's more airborne versus picking it up with your hands and stuff like that. So it's one of those things of, I was less concerned about picking things up in the park and stuff like that, and then you find out about more about airlines where, hey, there's the cabins are constantly refreshed with fresh air and stuff like that. It made us a lot more comfortable being able to fly and do a trip like this.
I should ask you, how big is your family, Chad? We didn't really touch on that.
Yeah.
So who all went on this trip?
So it was so my wife and I, and then I've got a daughter who just turned 14 and a son who's 12.
Okay, so a little bit older kids.
Yeah, so the nice part about this is their ages. Obviously, they require a little less supervision. They can help, and they're more cognizant. They understand what's going on with the whole situation. they're able to wear masks and are comfortable with it and things like that. So it was easy trip for us in a lot of ways with that respect.
Going back to Disney World, then, did you guys stay at Animal Kingdom the whole time, or did you do Pop and then go to Animal Kingdom?
We started at Pop Century. Yeah, we wanted to sort of finish with the deluxe resort. So we were at Pop Century for the first 5 days. And we really tried to center our trip around the parks and sort of that side of Walt Disney World, right? So trying to get our Hollywood Studios days out of the way over there because it's connects to the Skyliner. So we would hop on the Skyliner to go to those places, as well as Epcot. And then Magic Kingdom is, more or less on that sort of that side of the park, or that side of the Walt Disney World. We really spent the first 5 days kind of hammering out those parks. And then by the time we got to Friday, we moved over to Animal Kingdom Lodge, and then really just sort of spent the weekend kind of in and around Animal Kingdom, both the park and the resort.
And I know Chris is a big fan of the Skyliner, right, Chris?
Yeah, I think it's super convenient. I would absolutely hate being trapped in it above a lake or some sort of like high, tower. So the idea when it first opened that people were getting stuck and everybody was getting like panic attacks and all this stuff, I was like, wait a minute. Also, for those of you who don't know, I have a deep aversion to humidity. I grew up in California. We have a very dry heat. And so the idea of a Florida summer makes me nervous for those particular gondola things. And what I can tell you is we loved it. It was so convenient. We stayed at Pop. For those of you like running, Pop's a fun place to stay because they have this thing called Hourglass Lake. It's really convenient to run around. And the Skyliner basically goes right to the middle of the lake and you hop on, pick it up there. Super convenient. So I would give it an A+. And I actually think by putting it at Pop and Art of Animation, they sort of guaranteed that those resorts would get higher booking priority than the other All-Stars because... or let's call them, what are they called? Value
resorts, yeah.
Yeah, than the other value resorts because, it's a higher value. It's a new transportation option that you wouldn't be able to get otherwise.
So they'd recently redone those rooms at Pop, certainly since the last time we had stayed at those at the All-Stars. They're really nice. I mean, they're simple, right? But they're nice. And, they've got a nice fridge in there and stuff like that. We'd actually booked connecting rooms, which frankly was a savior in this whole thing. So we could put the kids over in the next room and then my wife and I in the other one. And what that allowed us to do, so the kids had separate beds and then we sort of had the connecting room and then basically brought the little chairs from the table thing over to our room. So we sort of had a little dinette set kind of thing there so it was super great with regards to that. But the redone rooms are really nice.
Yeah, I've stayed in there before. I know you can fit a family of 4 in there, but that would be tough for 5 days.
It would be tight for a week. I mean, could you do it? Yeah, you could do it. But
so wait, you did like 2 joining rooms?
Yeah, connecting rooms with a door between them.
Yeah, right. Because also over there, but not at Pop, at Art of Animation, they have those little mermaid rooms, which are like deluxe family suites, I think.
Yes, one of the buildings is just regular rooms, and I think the other 3 have.
That's what it is. So the Little
suites.
Mermaid.
I think the Mermaid
the Little Mermaid are the regular rooms,
yes,
and then all the other ones.
Yeah, there's like cars and 2 other ones I can't think of. Yeah.
Look at you, Chris, going from just you and Seth to all of a sudden thinking about that family suite, aren't you?
I mean, we tried having our. So I don't know if we actually only mentioned this on Patreon. So. Everybody listening, I am a foster parent. We have an 8-month-old who we are taking care of, and that's wild. But, of course, I am thinking about all the, even if we don't adopt this particular child, we will adopt a child eventually, as soon as they tell us we can, basically. So we're definitely starting a family, and now that makes you look at Disney in a whole new way, because we've never cruised with kids. I don't know anything about the like vibe of a Disney Cruise Line ship with a kid. And so, but also, so I'm sure you probably feel this way, Chad, but it's got to be so cool to see the parks and the ships through the eyes of your kids, like through them experiencing things in a way that's like different than an adult would. Like you mentioned seeing your son with the goggles watching Funnel Vision. Never even thought about that until you said that, but I'm like, that would be cool.
It's a different perspective for sure. I mean, I didn't spend a lot of time going to Disney, in sort of my pre-kid adult life. I'd been down there in high school once, and then as a kid once. So we didn't spend a lot of time going down there. I remember the first time, even just going to Walt Disney World with my kids. We actually spent my son's 4th birthday there. Was the last time previous to this time that we were there. And, having my daughter up on I've got a picture of my daughter up on my shoulders, looking at the castle and stuff like that. And then, this time around, my wife actually had snapped a picture of my daughter and I sort of walking up Main Street or whatever with the castle in front of us and stuff like that. So it's fun to sort of see that progression of your family sort of through the years. And the neat thing about Disney, whether it's with the cruise line or whether it's at the parks, it sort of grows with you, right? In a lot of ways, because you're sort of experiencing it one way, and then the next time you go back, kids maybe are a little bit older, and you sort of experience it in a totally different way. Like that with when my wife and I did the that sort of cruise by ourselves for our anniversary last May. We hadn't spent a lot of time. We'd never been to Serenity Bay. So that was the first time we'd ever been able to go and kind of do that, because we're always on the family beach with our family, because that's really what we're there for, right? And then same thing with we hadn't spent a lot of time in the adult area on the ships. I mean, here and there, but not like focused time there. You can get a different experience depending on kind of what your trip is, the ages that you're traveling with. I think the great part about Disney is that there really is something for everyone. And they've made sure of that, because they can really grow with you as your family gets older too.
Chad, you and I, our families are a lot alike as far as how we started off going to Disney. And I didn't go a lot when I was younger either, but it was pretty amazing to see our kids and the time that they had when they were younger. And that's really what hooked us and why we've continued as well. And we won't go into the ins and outs. I think a lot of other shows have covered the ins and outs of like how you book a park and all that type of stuff. Did you have any problems with that? Were you able to get the parks that you wanted to get?
No, it was really easy. I was a little nervous about that, because you sort of hem and haw, especially because we were booking somewhat late, especially with dining reservations. We kind of, our strategy with that was, well, number one, so I'm a Star Wars fan, right? So we were the one of the things that I lamented the most about losing my Disneyland / Disney Wonder trip twice was losing out on the new Star Wars stuff, Galaxy's Edge and Rise of Resistance. So literally, this whole trip would have been, frankly, a giant disappointment if I hadn't gotten Rise of Resistance, and so that was like the big focus for me. So we actually had booked Hollywood Studios 3 times throughout the trip
to make sure,
because I'm going to make darn sure that we're going to get this. But I'd also heard that the parks were more busy on the weekends. Knowing that Hollywood Studios is one of the smaller parks, that it's generally been the busiest, I avoided doing that on our first day. So we did Magic Kingdom on Sunday. We did Hollywood Studios on Monday, and then that was sort of like, once we got Rise of Resistance on that Monday, all bets were off. We could totally change all our park plans. I didn't care, right? Because I got it once. So we actually wound up moving, because we had Hollywood Studios also on our very last day as sort of a just in case kind of thing, and we moved that to be Animal Kingdom on back-to-back days. And so we just sort of spent our day on that side of the park. But what we did was, because we were booking late with dining reservations, we sort of tried to tailor our days in the parks around where we were able to get dining reservations on those given days. So like, say we wanted to, because we got a reservation for the Sci-Fi Diner at Hollywood Studios. Okay, well, that was going to be our second Hollywood Studios day, and then so on. So we were trying to really tailor our week around those things, because it didn't really matter to us sort of, what order we did the parks in or anything like that. So long, again, as I got Rise of Resistance at some point.
Chris, you want to talk about Star Wars here?
I mean, obviously. So you got there early in the morning. You were able to secure spots for Rise. What time in the day did your spots come up? So
I'll tell you the hot tip that I will give, and that I generally, when I'm looking into something that I want that bad, I'm going to find out every avenue that I have to try and increase my odds, right? So, So we took we actually Ubered from Pop. And we had them drop us off over at the entrance to the boardwalk. From the entrance to the boardwalk, there's a little walkway that kind of goes along the road, and then it goes like kind of down towards it's a river or whatever there, and then underneath the bridge that's like a straight shot, like walking right into Hollywood Studios. So that put us maybe, I don't know, 30th in line. We got the Uber at like 8:30. We got to probably in line there at like 9 o'clock. Hollywood Studios opens at 10 o'clock technically. Well, they open the gate, and then they let you go to all the temperature check stuff. They sort of line you up there, and then eventually about 9:15, 9:20, they start scanning you in through the temperature check, and then you're scanned into the park, and now all of a sudden you're in. One of the other things we really wanted to do, which was way more fun than I expected, was that Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway. Way more fun than I expected. Super fun. So we went and did that like right away to try and get that knocked off. And I was nervous because I'm like, all right, are we going to be out of this thing by 10 a.m.? And I'm asking the lady as we're walking up, I'm like, can we, based on where we are right now, can I get out? She goes, oh, yeah, you should be out. So sure enough, we were out by like 9:45. And then we wandered over towards Toy Story Land and then just found a spot to sit. Kind of, there's like an Andy's Lunchbox kind of little quick service thing over there. Well, it's not open right now, but they're using it, I think, as a relaxation zone. Where you can take your mask off and stuff. So we just sort of sat there waiting for the 10 o'clock boarding pass. So, we were all sort of signed into our devices. And the nice part about having, kids my age and my wife is we have 4 devices, right? That we're all taking a shot at this thing. You're never quite clear on who got it. I'm pretty sure I didn't. My wife will swear up and down that she's the one that got it the second time, even though she'd never practiced at all. Regardless, I didn't care because we were in group 4 and it was like, your time is now. So that we just shot
now,
over there. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I think we were group 4 and then group 12 on the second time around. So got super, super lucky. And if anyone's a Star Wars fan, I cannot rave enough about getting there to try that out.
Second time around on a different day because you can't do the ride twice.
Correct. Yeah. That was on our second Hollywood Studios. Yeah. Once you get it, so we got in both times at the 10 a.m. because now they're allowing booking also at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. If for some reason for backup boarding
wave of
stuff.
People.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Okay, so I've obviously been on the ride. I have been on the ride, interestingly, at Disney World and not Disneyland, because it opened at Disney World way ahead of Disneyland, and we happened to be going there for Run Disney. We won't, I guess, spoil it, because with COVID, there's probably a lot of people who haven't been on the ride, but I can say that it's easily like the most amazing ride I've ever been on. But what were your thoughts for Rise of the Resistance?
It's like you said, I wouldn't dare spoil it for somebody. I've spent the last year really avoiding spoilers, so that I could experience it in its true form. There's nothing like it. There's literally nothing like it because of just the way it is not. To call it a ride is almost underselling it. It is absolutely an experience, and you honestly feel like you are in a Star Wars story for it. You are a part of something during that. So really, it's amazing.
Yeah, I agree. Echo everything. Did you do any other special Star Wars things? Did you do Smuggler's Run?
We did, yeah. Which I was honestly prepared to be somewhat disappointed for because of you sort of hear. I heard sort of some not so great things, or maybe not so great things, but people were as over the moon excited about it as the other one. But it was fun, right? It's neat to sort of get in there and feel like you're kind of in the cockpit of the Millennium Falcon. There's some parts of it that I think that are a little underwhelming. Like if you're not in the pilot seat, it's not quite as fun.
It's like you're basically pushing buttons. You're putting buttons.
Yeah, it's literally when a button lights up, you push it. That's kind of your job.
It's like
if you're the gunner,
space.
Yeah, if you're the gunner or the engineer, yeah, it's kind of like you're just sort of like pushing buttons and you're sort of watching and you're kind of like all over the place. It was fun, don't get me wrong, but not as great. The one thing that I would tell you that we all loved was the cantina there. That Oga's Cantina
so good.
Is like I was expecting to enjoy it, but I've never been so happy to spend $15 on a beer in my entire life. Just being in that atmosphere and was just amazing. And my kids loved it. The waiters are so great. So anybody who's listening that is worried about like taking your kids and stuff in there, it's super kid friendly. The waiters are fabulous with the kids because they know how to sort of interact with them and get them, draw them out sometimes a little bit when they're a little bit like, what is this place? My daughter, so actually for Christmas, there's a Galaxy's Edge cookbook. My daughter, I can't remember the name of the drink that she had, but she's like, I need to go home and figure out how to make this drink. And so, sure enough, the drink recipe is in that book. So when I was at the grocery store yesterday, she had me picking up all the ingredients for the kid drink and stuff that's there. So it's her new go-to thing. But yeah, the cantina, we actually made reservations for it twice on those 2 different days that we were there and loved it. That was one of our favorite things.
So I'm starting to think that your next cruise needs not to be on the Wonder, it needs to be on the Halcyon.
Well, so I remember when I saw the preliminary pricing coming out for that, and I was like, not a chance, not going to do it. But let's be honest, I'm totally going to spend that money.
Yeah,
at some point, I've got to stop kidding myself. We all know I'm going to do it.
As Christy said earlier today, who needs to retire, right?
Yeah,
a little bit of
it's
a
gonna be
joke
so
there.
amazing.
I mean, at this
it's gonna
point,
be so cool.
At this point, I'm going all in on Disney because we're now investigating DVC as well at this point, and so at this point the mouse has his firm grip on my wallet.
So for those who don't know, just in case, the Halcyon is the name of the ship that you are supposedly going to stay in at the Star Wars hotel when they get that built, and it sounds like they're going forward with it, which is awesome.
I'm hearing 2021 still with it, so. We'll see. It may be out before the Wish. It sounds like
probably
that's the next Disney cruise ship right there.
Exactly. Chris is shaking his head. All right, so we didn't have a chance to go through like all the parks, but were there some memorable experiences in the different parks as well that you can talk about, or rides that stood out since you hadn't been back there for so long?
Yeah, I mean the stuff that so we had not been back there since they'd done the Fantasyland expansion because that was still under construction when we were there the last time. So that was really neat to see. I think Toy Story Land I really liked because that was new since we'd been there also. That was super fun. The Slinky Dog roller coaster is great. And surprisingly, I think the thing that we loved the most there was that Toy Story Mania ride. Super fun. Just wait, and I expect it to be completely stupid because I'm not a fan of the Buzz Lightyear Space Ranger one that's over at Magic Kingdom. We're just sort of like pulling on the string and it's which I sort of expected that, and we got out of there and we're like, that was great. Let's do it again. So it was just I think the one thing I would say for sure is getting there, at least right now, getting there early pays dividends because we were able to knock off 3-4 rides like almost to the point before the park almost even opened, and then it gets busier. So going early paid a ton of dividends for us to be able to do a lot of things early and then sort of be a little more relaxed and chilled in the afternoon.
Yeah. I got to tell my youngest son, he went kicking and screaming. We were at Disneyland. We just got off the Incredicoaster. We're like, all right, let's go. There was like a short line because it's usually an hour on a Toy Story Midway Mania. And I think it was like half hour or something like that. We're like, come on, dude, let's go. And he was so cranky through that whole line. And we got off it, and now it's one of his favorite rides. I know.
It's incredibly fun. Like you describe it to somebody, and I'm like, that sounds really dumb. I mean, there's no way that's fun, but it's fun.
So, okay, what about Epcot and Magic Kingdom? Anything stand out? Because your kid's a little bit older. What do they think about Magic Kingdom? What kind of rides do they like there?
So, yeah, my daughter loves Splash Mountain. That was like the thing that she had that she like remembered from when we were there when she was she had been 6 or something at the time. So that was like her favorite thing to go on back then. The kids both loved at this point. And at that point, I think we weren't quite ready to put her on Space Mountain just because it's dark and you're sort of sitting by yourself. And I was like, I don't know how this is going to go with her at 6 years old. So they both really loved that. At Epcot, honestly, the thing which surprised me, my kids actually really, so it was during Food and Wine, right? My kids loved Food and Wine for some reason. It was like just going and like getting little things from different places and stuff like that. They loved it, and it poured rain, so that we like Florida can be, right, where it just the skies opened up in the afternoon and it was pouring rain and stuff like that. But we're still kind of going around, so they actually enjoyed this whole World Showcase way more than I expected they would. They thought Soarin' was okay and Spaceship Earth was kind of boring to them, but they enjoyed Epcot, I think, more for the Food and Wine, which frankly surprised the heck out of me. Because I expected that was to be like and a lot of it's still under construction right now with all the Future World Pavilion or whatever they call it. So there isn't a lot going on there at the moment. But so it really surprised me that the kids liked it as much as they did. At Animal Kingdom, my daughter would be content going on Expedition Everest all day long if we'd let them. So we did that a bunch. And then Flight of Passage, which was new. Obviously, the Avatar stuff was new for us as well. So getting there and seeing that stuff was really awesome. It was a neat trip to get back and see a lot of things. Enough time had passed where there was just a ton of new stuff for us. The parks were honestly, they almost felt brand new in a lot of ways to us.
Yeah, every park had some new marquee attraction, basically. Except maybe Epcot. Would there be anything like
I don't think so. Yeah, I think everything that was at Epcot was already there previously.
You probably had not seen the redo of Test Track.
No, you're right. So Test Track was new. And actually, we didn't do that last time, probably because the kids were just too young for it. So that was actually my first time ever on Test Track. And that was something my daughter was super into because we had watched something on, I don't know if it was on Disney Plus or Amazon or something like that about Disney parks. And they mentioned about how that was the fastest ride at Walt Disney World. And my daughter's like, that's the one I got to go on. Yeah. And sure enough, that thing goes legit fast. When it gets outside and it's going around that curve, that thing is flying.
It does. It's also notorious for breaking down and opening late.
And we were in line, and my wife got the flash on the phone or something like that. But it started mentioning about how there was weather in the area and stuff like that. And we're like, we need to get through this line, otherwise we're not coming back here. It's like it was our only day that we were going to Epcot, and I was like, well, if we don't get through this, then these storms come, chances are it's shut down the rest of the day, and we're not going to make it back. So we lucked out.
Sounds like you'll have to go back.
I mean, it's going to happen.
If you're going to be buying DVC, are you planning to do? We don't have to spend a lot of time on this because it's so complicated. But are you planning on doing resale or buying an original contract? We're
going to buy resale. So I listened to the show actually. When you guys aired it with Nick Cotton from the DVC resale market, and that sort of started putting things in my head a little bit, of course. And then we'd already that might have already been at the point where we'd already booked at Animal Kingdom. And knowing that that's a DVC resort, the wheels start spinning of, all right, well, should I look at this? Because we looked at it years ago, and just the initial buy-in, because at the time I didn't know anything about the resale market. The initial buy-in, frankly, it's intimidating, right? When you start looking at how many points you need, it's just the whole thing is complicated, like you mentioned, not wanting to get too much into it. When we looked at it from our standpoint of how we would be using DVC, I'd rather, for the money, I'd rather buy more points than buy direct for the perks that come of direct. So for us, the difference between resale and difference between buying direct was almost 100 points for the same amount of money. So to me, I'd rather have those points and be able to use those, be able to get those 1 bedrooms and things like that are easier for our family to travel than it would be to go direct and then get some benefits that we probably honestly wouldn't use, like buying annual passes or things like that.
So you guys stayed in Kidani. Were you able to go into Jambo House and see the lobby there? Kidani's is a little bit smaller. What were your thoughts overall of, obviously you've started down the road of the resale market at Animal Kingdom Lodge. What were your guys' thoughts of staying with the Savannah View, and how was that for you?
It lived up to all of the hype. I will say that not all Savannah views are equal, because we wound up on the Pembe Savannah, which doesn't have giraffes, and my wife's favorite animal, the giraffe. So it was a little disappointing when it came to that, but to be able to see the kids out there looking at the animals in the savannah, we actually took binoculars, which is a pro tip to take binoculars to be able to look at the animals. It's great. We did wander over to Jambo House. Right now, only the DVC rooms are open, so it's really dead in there right now. So all the restaurants are shut down. The Victoria Falls bar area is shut down. But certainly just the lobby area there is it's incredible. And I can only imagine what it's like, once it's all lit up and brought to life. It's certainly more impressive than what you get at Kidani. But we were in a 1-bedroom, and the Kidani 1-bedroom had 2 bathrooms to it, which is a lifesaver, which you don't, I guess, get at the 1-bedrooms that are over in Jambo House. Which I found interesting. But yeah, it's Animal Kingdom for us lived up to all of it. You're just sitting by the pool, and just chilling there with a couple of beverages. That was the point where my wife and I sort of looked at each other. We're like, okay, I get it. I get why it's better. Let's start thinking about this for DVC.
I think you can't go wrong with getting more points, because you're going to go through them quickly when you start using them. Trust me on that part. And I think, with your kids being older too, and I mean this in all earnestness, is that I think that Animal Kingdom Lodge, personally, for my wife and I, we love it there. There's so many good restaurants. The Victoria Falls bar is amazing. There's 2 different pools. The one at Jambo is a little bit more chill than the Kidani is more like family, kids and stuff like that. So you can kind of go over to the Jambo House as you get older. It's a great place where I could see just my wife and I spending time once the kids are gone.
That was a lot of the thought process, to be honest with you, is we're looking at this as a long-term kind of buy-in thing for it. And honestly, the thing that I like about it is that, certainly there's going to be a large investment up front with buying the points. But once we kind of get to a retirement age, these become pretty inexpensive vacations on an annual basis if you start thinking about it from just basically paying your dues for the year. So to be able to go and spend a week at a place like that for the cost of our dues in retirement is pretty reasonable.
Oh, definitely. And just for a backstory, so Jambo, the DVC rooms were original hotel rooms that they converted over, and so that's why they're not as big. But man, we stayed in one of those 1-bedrooms over Kidani last time when we went on our last cruise last October, which is crazy. It was a year ago, and they are huge, aren't they?
It's there's a ton of space. I mean, a double wide balcony, so there's just tons of room out there. Having, especially, with those one bedrooms, having a full kitchen, like if you were there for a week staying as a DVC guest, honestly, you could almost cut down on a ton of your food costs, just being able to make just simple dinners like tacos or whatever else in the evenings, and not necessarily go and spend $150, $200 in a restaurant.
Definitely. Well, Chad, I really appreciate you reaching out tonight, and it's been a long time coming to get you on the show. But thank you so much for coming on. What's next for your family? I guess is it Walt Disney World or a cruise?
It's actually a cruise, but it's actually with Royal.
Okay.
So we've got a spring break cruise booked with Royal on Lure of the Seas, which I'm super excited about because we parked next to Oasis class ships a couple of times in port, and I've always sort of looked at those going, man, what must it be like to be on those massive ships with all the stuff that's going on there. So we're really excited about that. We're actually sailing with some friends that we've sailed with on DCL a few times. So it's good. We're really looking forward to it. Hopefully they're going to go. I mean, it's at this point we're all crossing our fingers and toes at this point that the cruises come back and that everything can continue safely. So that's what's next. And then again, I may be booking our Disney Wonder, trying to get that Grand Slam in before Wish comes, because I can't call it a Grand Slam if Wish is on the water.
That is true. Well, Chad, I hope that Royal Caribbean cruise goes for you. I hope the Wonder one comes through as well. I hope we're all out there sailing again soon. But I'm glad you were able to pivot, have a great time at Walt Disney World, spend some quality time with your family. You're right. It's nice to be in just some different scenery with them. And when you get back from the Royal Caribbean cruise, we'd love to have you come back and talk about your experience there.
Yeah, for sure.
As we get out of here tonight, thanks again. We really do appreciate it, and we will see you out on the water soon, Chad.
Thanks, you guys. I enjoyed it.
Well, that's going to wrap up our show today. Once again, I really want to thank Chad for coming on and sharing his and his family's experiences sailing with Disney Cruise Line in the past and pivoting this year to spend some time down at Walt Disney World. And how cool would that have been to see the parks and all the changes after having not been there for over 8 years. So once again, Chad, thanks for coming on and sharing your experiences with us. If you would like to come on and share your experiences with Disney Cruise Line, Adventures by Disney, or Run Disney, we'd love to talk to you. You can reach out to me, Steve, at DCLpodcast.com, and we'll get you set up and we'll do a little talking with Disney Cruise Line, Run Disney, or Adventures by Disney. Also, if you would like to help support the show, you can do so with our Patreon program. You can go over to patreon.com/DCLpodcast and find out all the information there. We generally have one extra show each month that we do live for our Patreon supporters that you can tune into and listen. It's a lot of fun. So if you're interested in that, go over to patreon.com/DCLpodcast. You can find out the information there. Well, we are well into the holiday season. I hope each and every one of you out there, everybody who comes back and listens to us each week, I hope you and your families are having some time to kind of kick back a little bit and enjoy a little bit of the magic. I know our family's done a couple different holiday things here. We finally got our tree up. We've got our ship, the beautiful Disney Magic, up on the tree, along with other ornaments that we love seeing up there. So I just hope each and every one of you out there just taking those little moments to enjoy the Christmas and holiday magics with your family. So between now and our next show, on behalf of myself, Steve, Christy, and Chris, all of us here at the DCL Podcast, we want to wish you to be well, be safe out there, and we'll see you next time on the DCL Podcast. The DCL Podcast is not affiliated with the Disney Cruise Line, Walt Disney Company, Adventures by Disney, or Run Disney. All of the opinions expressed on our shows are those of the hosts and the guests who appear on the show. If you have any questions about any of these products, please contact the Walt Disney Company.